Hi guys. So it took me a while to think of making this video, even, I guess because porn addiction, I think, is so normalized and so commonplace that maybe we tend not to think of it as an addiction, even though in so many cases it clearly meets the criteria to be considered an addiction. And yeah, I guess I always just saw it as just something that you just did. Like, it's not, I knew I was addicted to it, but I always thought, like, it's just kind of part of life, really, you know, like you just have to look at porn. And it's only as I've gotten older and I've dealt with other problems in my life, and I've like quit drinking and I've quit weed various times, and I haven't smoked weed for a long time, and whenever I have quit weed and started again, it's been a conscious decision, you know, and that's been difficult enough in itself. I've talked about that in other videos, but it's been a kind of conscious decision to start again. I haven't had a sudden uncontrollable compulsion to smoke weed that has sort of pulled me in against my better interests or judgment. And so the more I've quit other things and become healthier mentally and physically, the more I've realized, oh yeah, porn is like the one thing I can't ever fully get rid of, and the one thing that I remain addicted to. I heard it said once, I think it was by Russell Brand, because he quit drugs, and then he before, when he was younger, he was obese, and then he was addicted to drugs, and then he had all the sex stuff. And he said that food, I think it was him, maybe someone else, food and sex are kind of weird ones because you can't really quit those things. Like heroin, you can just never touch it again. Of course, that's difficult, but you can just, you know, the idea is just to completely remove it from your life. Food, you have to eat to live, and sex, you could, I guess, become completely celibate or abstinent, but is abstinent the word? I don't know, but it's not really, I don't know. I mean, even if you do that, you're probably gonna like still come in your sleep, to be honest. Like, you know, it's quite hard in most cases to fully abstain from any kind of sexual activity or thought or whatever. So really it's like food in that sense. Sorry if you can hear all the noise, by the way. I've got Luna behind me, she's still injured, and my girlfriend's out and I have to like dog sit because she has to be supervised, hence the mess. But yeah, you can't, you know, like, it's something, assuming you're healthy, you're going to have a sex drive, and you're gonna want to eat, you know. And yeah, I've found that whilst it's a lot more compulsive for me than weed or these days any drug really, like porn is. It's a lot more of a compulsion. It is also, it's different in that way, but the way in which it's similar to weed for me and similar to some drugs is like the mind games it can play on you, and the voice in your head which convinces you that it's a good idea and that it's all right, and that oh no, you need to like relax, you know, like you're clearly like stressed out and this will be really good, you know, just look at some porn, have a wank, and you'll sleep better tonight, and you'll recover better from your workout, and you'll be fine at work tomorrow, and you'll feel better. Or like, you know, it will fill your time, you'll feel less lonely, or it will in some way, it will be a good experience for you beyond the sort of pointless, empty, momentary pleasure that is really all that it can provide. And that dialogue in your head is surprisingly convincing sometimes, despite how stupid it is. I think it's a bit like when you're tripping on acid, for example. Your body is very anxious often. Your body is, a lot of things are happening in your body, and everything's going very fast, and you're getting visuals, and everything's changing, and you're aware of the fact that you're having this experience, and you're coming up on acid, and everything's crazy. So you can't take long to think about things. You have to you're kind of distracted from your own critical thinking process. It's a bit like trying to think while you're driving on the motorway, kind of. You can't really sit down and think it through very easily. And with porn, it's a bit similar. I think sometimes if you get horny, it's hard to think straight because there's thoughts telling you like, oh, this is a good idea, you should have a wank, you should come or whatever, and you're like, part of you is like, oh, maybe this is a bad idea, but that part of you is not really given the time of day because like your heart's kind of racing and you feel physically like distracted, and you just can't settle enough to actually go, you know what, when has this ever been a thing that's made me feel happy? When has this ever been anything other than something that's just I've sort of regretted afterwards, or just wasted a whole evening on when I could have been doing something more productive, or that's made me feel like bad about myself, or of course negatively affected my relationship, because it's obviously a huge problem in relationships as well, and it's been one in mine, and on the surface it's been a problem, and that's for both of us, to be honest, and that's been an outward, clear, objective problem for both of us. But underneath that, I think there's a lot more as well. I think it's caused relationship issues far deeper than the very obvious ones that it's caused. Yeah. So I started watching porn when I was pretty young, but I guess not as young as a lot of people now. Like, unfortunately, it seems pretty normal for people as young as like 12 to have access to porn. I didn't see real porn until I was, I guess, like, I don't know about when I first saw it, but when I properly saw it, I guess I was like 14, when I actually had like access to it, which is still, I mean, I don't think it's good for you at any age. So, 14 is very young to see it. Yeah, I missed I was at the tail end of people who didn't at some point in their life where streaming like porn, like Pornhub and stuff didn't exist. And I feel grateful for that. I think I might have been too afraid to try and access it anyway, because I was afraid to get in trouble. But still, even when I did get access to porn early on, it wasn't very good. It wasn't as readily available. Now the availability is just, to me as an adult, it's like overwhelming. Like it's just a flood. It's like it is just overwhelming. It's crazy. And then it wasn't quite like that. And I feel almost lucky in a way, not as lucky as people who just grew up without internet porn. You had to go and fucking buy a video or a magazine, and that, I'm sure, had all its problems that came with it, but it was much harder to become obsessed with it then. So yeah, when I was like, sorry about my voice, when I was 14 or so, people, when we started getting our own phones that had videos on them, people would Bluetooth each other videos, and there was weird stuff. I remember seeing Two Girls, One Cup then, if I remember correctly, years before it became a thing. Or it was another similar video of women eating shit, and it was awful. There was this weird guy in my year. I don't want to say his name. He's a strange character, and he had that, and then he had videos of like beheadings and really horrible stuff, and then he had porn videos as well. Mostly it was like beheadings and shit videos. I don't know who he was getting these from, man, but he was like the source of all the porn videos that were going around in my year. And if anyone watching this went to my school, they'll probably know who this person was. Strange fella. I looked back. I remember as an adult looking back at him and thinking, God, that's fucked up that he had all that stuff. You know, it's fucked up that we all saw it, but it's fucked up that he was the one who had it all. I don't know where he was getting it. Anyway, yeah. So the porn videos he had was shit. They were like really bad. They were from a company called QMOV, and there was one. Sorry. It's early in the morning while I'm recording this, and from a company called QMOV, and there was one with Roxy Giselle or something, and it had a racial slur as the name of the video. I remember it very well. It had a racial slur as the name of the video that I can't say, like .mov, you know. I'm not sure they were even correct about her ethnicity. I don't know. But anyway, that was what it was called. And it was not very good. I didn't even like it. Well, it wasn't to my tastes particularly, because it was just not very nice. It was very... I remember thinking, like, this is a bit nasty. It's just something about it is a bit, like, nasty and sort of abusive, kind of, you know? It was a bit like... I just thought, isn't it... aren't you supposed to enjoy sex? Like, why is it so, like, sort of... It seems like it's sort of mean-spirited or something. But, of course, it being the first, like, porn video I had in my possession, I found it very horny, like, but I still felt like, do they have to do all of this? You know, like, why aren't they just having sex? And, yeah, I found it all a bit... a bit gross. I never understood the obsession with, like, facials and stuff like that, you know. I didn't really get why it was like that. And yeah, and I was like really scared to look at it, like, because I thought I'd get in trouble, you know. And I would keep deleting it from my phone, and then I'd have to get someone to send it to me the next day. And I would, like, go into the bathroom, lock the doors, put it on mute. It's like this tiny video in, like, you know, fucking 144p, probably less, literally probably less. And you could barely see anything, and it was just a free video, like a trailer, so it was like 1 minute long or something. And I would just put that on the wicker basket and just, like, wank to that, and with the door locked, and just listening out. Like, the second I heard someone move downstairs, I'd be like, oh my God, take the phone and, like, you know, whatever, and, like, hide it. And then I guess, yeah, just slowly over time it became, I got more used to it, more used to, like, watching porn, and a bit less afraid. And I found a couple of websites, and I'd watch them, and generally I just watched with the sound off, which annoyed me because I really liked the sound, you know, almost more than the visuals, but I didn't want anyone to hear. And then I started watching it really quietly with the speakers on. I had, like, really shit PC speakers, and I'd listen to it with, like, literally on, like, the volume on, like, 2%, and I'd put my ear up to it just to hear it for a sec, and then stand up, because I thought if I put headphones in I wouldn't be able to hear my surroundings and everything. It was like a whole operation I had going on. And I'd been wanking prior to getting into porn, but this sent me into, like, just from around then, I just became, like, wanking became my life, to be honest. It just became an obsession. I used to just wank constantly, and I became very depressed in hindsight, and very tired, and I was already unhappy. I wasn't a happy kid, but I became, like, physically exhausted. And to be honest, I wasn't energetic prior to this anyway. I was unhealthy, I think, and genuinely depressed and inactive. But I became much more so like that, and filthy as well. I mean, to be honest, like I used to just jizz on the floor and then just walk off and just leave it, or I would just like jizz in my pants and then just put them back on. Not even put them, I wouldn't even take them off. I would just jizz into my pants, put them on, and just go about my day, like, and just walk around like that. It was insane. I developed very late. Basically, I went through puberty very late. So at first, I didn't actually. That was part of what built these habits. Was when I first started getting into porn, I didn't really come anyway, to be honest. So it wasn't really a thing. And then I didn't really adjust to the fact that I was like getting older, you know. But I think that was a part of it as well. Like I felt early. I never. I grew up as one of four boys. Like I had three older brothers, and all of us were like really, really weird around girls, and like didn't know how to talk to girls. And there's not one of my brothers who was like successful. I've in fact in my family, my brothers anyway, not including my dad. I'm the most successful with women, which is saying something, you know. It's insane, really. Anyway, yeah. So I was always, you know, like all boys that age, I really liked girls. Basically, I was like really into them. Like, and at a certain point, it became like I just liked them so much, you know. And it was very clear to me early on that they did not like me, basically, that any minimal social skills I had around other guys, like, did not translate to girls. And a lot of the time, strangely, they seemed to actively dislike me. And I think I had one of those personalities that, like, to be fair, a lot of people disliked. And I was like shy and not that confident, but also deep down I kind of felt I was like better than other people as well in some weird way. I had this kind of weird like fragile ego thing going on, and I think that would translate as like a weird sort of arrogance, a sort of awkward arrogance. And it wasn't really that a lot of the time. It was like intense social discomfort, but also I just probably didn't like. I feel it feels too strong a word to say I came off as a prick, like, but because other people were much worse and were much more popular, you know. So I feel almost it's not really fair to frame it like that. But probably, yeah, like to people, that's how they saw it. I came off as a bit of a prick sometimes, and I was just shy and awkward and very small. More importantly, I realise now like how important that is to women. I was very small, and in fact, it was strangely. I remember when I was a kid, being tall was a very big deal. And then we all got a bit older and started to become, you know, adults in quotes, not really. And being tall kind of ceased being a thing. And then in recent years, there's become an obsession with height. And I think it's partially socially driven, to be honest, like, because you can be like average height and very strong and capable and fit, or you can be tall and like completely physically incapable and weak. And like, there seems to be women seem to just these more and more it seems to be a thing, like, you know, that height is like a sort of a major area of focus, pretty much the sole area of focus, really. Like it's sort of become like an obsession, and I think that's partially a social thing. It definitely is an innate thing as well. I totally get that, but I think it's become a sort of a meme almost. But yeah, when I was a kid, height was very important as well. Being tall was important, and I was always very small, and had a lot of issues like I mentioned, going through puberty very late, and I was very, very, very concerned about this and deeply insecure over it, and like didn't have any like hair on my body. Like I had like just bare legs, you know, like a woman, you know, like just completely bare legs, and small and like a high voice, and I started to get like breasts, and I always felt like just like I had like fucked up hair, and even before I was bald, like I had like a cowlick and my hair went up at the front, and I was always trying to like, and then it got to a point, I think I just, like quite a lot of people do in that kind of situation, I just then thought, well, I'm just not gonna like shower and care about how I look, and I'm not gonna try, and I'm just gonna get fat, and so in my early teen years I just started to just get fat and decided no girl is ever gonna, like, you know, find me attractive, and just don't worry about it, you know. And I did worry about it, but don't bother, you know, don't make the effort, which is stupid actually, because in hindsight, people who had it a million times worse than me, who did have kind of insurmountable kind of problems in that regard, and probably if I had like worked out and smiled more, I know that's like an annoying cliche, you know, smile more, that people say to like men who like can't get dates and stuff, but had I just done those things, and been probably as well, if I had just been nicer, and because I always saw people who were really popular who were not nice, they were like cool and they weren't nice, they were usually mean, and they were really popular, and so I thought being nice doesn't do anything. But what I didn't look at was the people who were below them on the ladder but had friends, and often ended up having like girlfriends when they got a bit older and stuff, and were like, and they were just normal nice people, but I kind of just overlooked that and thought, no, you know, people who are popular are like good looking and they're good at sports or whatever, and they're tall and they're like dicks basically, and so, you know, there's no point like sort of trying really, I'm just a loser. And yeah, so then those two things exacerbated one another, you know, the porn and the unattractiveness to the opposite sex, and the obsessively wanking over like every girl in my year, and every teacher who was even more than like a 4 out of a 10, and just every female I met, and like trying to find porn that looked like them, and then just wanking all the time, and looking for something in that it wasn't there, looking for something in porn and masturbation that just wasn't there, and was never going to be there, and isn't there. You can't find it in porn, and it's a cliche, and it's sometimes overstated, but most of the time it's not just like the base like sexual activity that you're looking for, you know, like there's a bit more. I'm reticent to use the term intimacy, because I think that has connotations that are a bit heavier perhaps. It's probably an accurate word, but it's been made to sound almost a bit more intense and romantic perhaps, but something a bit that, or something less than that, but just something a bit more social and reciprocal, and validation, I guess, you know. Validation is it really just the feeling that someone is attracted to you, someone wants you in that way, you know, is like very important, and unfortunately a lot of people don't feel that, and I guess ironically those feelings that I had could then plant, you know, seeds in me that mean that later on when I grow up I'll make other people feel that way, and not that revokes any of the responsibility or anything, but it's just, you know, it's how it is. So yeah, I was always looking for something that didn't kind of wasn't there, and I think it wasn't that long after that I got into smoking weed, and I know that had a pretty terrible effect on my teenage years and my sort of success or lack of, and my academic performance and my social life and dating. That didn't happen, I didn't date anyone, but you know, that the possibility of that. And I think now I realise as well that it would be harsh to blame just weed, because I know now as an adult, if I wanked 7 times today, I would not do anything else. I would not get anything done. And tomorrow and the day after and the day after that, I would probably be exhausted. And the thing is with porn, you can do that, you know, like it wasn't normal in the past to be, you know, like to be able to like wank so much because you need like novelty, you know, it's hard to, but I was able to just wank like so many times in a day because I could just find new different porn, and it was so overwhelmingly stimulating. Like you're not meant to have that, you know, you're not meant to have access to like American women who've had like plastic surgery and know what they're doing sexually, and like Latinas and like Asian women, and then like for a while I was into like sisters, you know, like big ones. And I don't know why. I think it's because I used to go on a lot of like hip hop forums, and a lot of the black guys on there used to post this porn. And I was like, oh, I guess this is what people watch, is it? Okay. There's a lot of baby oil in this video. Oh, look, she's in a paddling pool filled with baby oil. I guess I like this. Strange thing for a 14-year-old white boy from Devon to be into. I'm probably never going to have access to this in my life, you know, unless I take a very strange holiday to the United States, to one of the less touristic destinations. But it wasn't like a major sort of phase of mine, but it did. I remember telling my mate about it. I was like, yeah, you into this as well? And he was like, no, not even remotely. I was like, really? You're not into like large, like, no, me neither. Yeah. Anyway, so I'd have lots of different phases of different things I was into. Reflective of different, I guess, different mental, I don't know what deficiencies is the wrong word, but hang-ups, you know, and personal issues. And I think that can sometimes be read into too deeply. Oh, I like this because of this, and because of this thing about my personality, and I'm into this or that. But at the same time, there's often a lot of truth to that kind of psychoanalysis, especially as it relates to this. So anyway, then like the tubes came out, you know, like Red Tube and stuff like that, and it became so much easier to access, and it just, with every year that went by, it just got worse and worse and worse. And then I started to sense like I wasn't going to find what I was looking for in porn. Like I was so desperate for something more than porn that I would try to like fuck things. Like I tried to like make things to fuck, you know, because I thought, oh, then it'll be more like I'm actually having sex. And then I can really just, because in my mind still, because of the ideas that had been fed to me, and I don't say this in a blaming kind of, you know, it's still my misguided notion, and a misguided notion that I think many of us carry in this day and age. But in my mind, sex is like mechanical. It's like, or I just want this just thing, you know, and if I can just create that feeling on my cock with like an object, then I have it. I just close my eyes, or I'll watch porn, and I'll just pretend, and then I'm doing this, and that's it. That's the same, because all it is just this. And it took a while to realize, or I was in denial of the fact that, like, it's not, you know, it can be, of course, that some sex is just that. And like a lot of sex nowadays is just that. It's basically like having a wank. So having a wank is not that different. But a large part of what people want from sex is a lot more than that, or at least is more than that. and you can't replicate that at home by yourself, essentially, because it's a social thing. It's not something that you can provide yourself, or that an internet video can provide you. And so, yeah, I would try and make it a more full-on experience. And of course, every time I'd be like just empty afterwards, you know. And then I started trawling like sex forums and stuff, and like sex chat rooms, and to try and have like cyber sex, and like to try and find, I thought like cyber sex will do, you know, like I won't have to show them a picture of me. I didn't really have any pictures of myself, and the ones I did take, I was like, no one must ever see this, you know. And so I thought like, but I'll just find like, there must be a woman who's just horny and who wants cyber sex. And I have a mate who says this to me now. He's looking for like, he's sort of like trying to like date casually, and he's like, yeah, there must be a woman out there who just needs a good shag, you know, once a week or so, you know. She's just like me, you know. I'm like, dude, there's not, like, this doesn't exist. And if it does, she's found that already. You're not going to go on the internet and find a woman who, and no offense to you, like, if you're just a normal guy, you know, they're not looking for, it doesn't really exist. And in my mind, I had the same delusion. I was like, yeah, there must be another woman who's like, yeah, who doesn't want to post pictures of herself, but wants to have cyber sex, but who, you know, whatever. And I think in reality, what I found was a lot of gay men who were conning straight men into having cyber sex with them and sending them photos. And I was always, I would stay up all night, you know, and then I'd be like, oh my God, it's like 5 a.m. and whatever. By this point I was older, you know, like, I'm probably missing out a lot of details, but anyway, yeah, maybe people don't want as much, beg your pardon, people don't want as much detail as I've given thus far anyway. Might have been a bit heavy on the wanking aspect of this video. So anyway, yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, so I go on these forums, but yeah, eventually, strangely, I eventually, I was really into MILFs. I forgot this part. I was really into MILFs, which I think most teenage boys are into, like MILFs, you know. And yeah, by the time I was like, I don't know, 17 or so, I was pretty much exclusively into MILFs. And another unreasonable expectation I had was I used to constantly look for posh British MILFs. And I understand now as an adult, although this is almost different now, to be fair, but certainly back then there were no posh women doing porn, especially not posh MILFs. There's no such thing as a genuinely posh MILF doing porn, because if she's a posh MILF, she lives on like a country estate, and you know, yeah. It could happen, but yeah, the ones that were masquerading as posh British MILFs were not posh, and they probably didn't even have children. Not that that's like an important aspect of being a MILF in porn, you know. You just have to be able to sort of appear vaguely sort of motherly, I guess. And it's kind of an awkward thing, you know, because it's like, it's sort of, you know, it's embarrassing kind of in a way, because they're MILFs, they're, you know, they're mothers, they're mother figures, maternal figures, and you know, they're more like mother surrogates, I think. They're not like your mum, you know, like they never looked like my mum. They never needed to. That's not what it is. But of course, yeah, it's perhaps it's I mean, I think to some degree it's a natural inclination and tendency that we've made into a really awkward and embarrassing thing. But it can also become outsized due to like psychological issues or mother issues or issues in your childhood. But at the same time, I would say, I mean, if you see, for example, in women, like they tend to prefer older men, and there's a slightly strange relationship sometimes that fathers and daughters have that's quite full on. I'm not implying it's like, but boys tend to be very attached to their mums, and women tend to be very attached to their dads. And it's quite a strong bond that fathers have with their daughters that can sometimes seemingly be quite hard to have with their sons. I sometimes get the feeling with my dad, like if one of us had been a girl, he would probably have been a bit closer to her. I think sometimes like having children of the same gender as you, they can almost be a bit threatening to you. And I know it's people would say, no, that's, you love your children. It's never like that. No one is ever this. And of course we can like transcend all these things, but I do think there are some kind of innate things that just happen in humans that are just kind of there, and they're not always, and they can be made to sound really weird and twisted, but I don't think they are. I think we've kind of removed ourselves so far from it that we've decided that these things are like weird and twisted, and they're not really. I think like generally like boys really love their mums basically, and that becomes like their model for like women. And I think the difference is if you go to school and then you actually are like successful with girls and stuff, and you get like girlfriends your age and stuff, like then you kind of just shift over onto that kind of pathway. But if that doesn't work out for you, then the only women who have ever been nice to you are like sort of teachers or your mum or your mum's friends, or like they just sort of feel sorry for you, you know. And then also I guess there's a feeling of like if you feel sort of sexually inadequate or like clueless, like there's a feeling of like, oh yeah, like a MILF will sort this out, you know. A MILF knows what's up. And I think that generally as well changes as you get older, and you sort of become a bit more aware of what it really means to be in quotes a MILF, and perhaps the idea is not quite the same, it's quite as enticing as it is when you're younger. Don't get me wrong, I love a MILF, a nice MILF. You know, you can't beat it really. Probably I think the hottest woman ever to me is Nigella Lawson. I think she's like the ultimate MILF. But I would say like my primary sexual interest these days is not really in MILFs. But yeah, anyway, back then I was really into MILFs. And strangely, through trawling all these like cybersex chat rooms and stuff, I met an older woman who, very much against the odds, I began talking to privately because I said something she found very funny. I was being funny in the chat room or something, and I was pretty funny, like, and most of the people on sex chat rooms are not very funny. And so I think she just liked that and was one of those women who genuinely rates personality, and they do exist, and are genuinely attracted to like intelligence or humor, or, you know, and as are a lot of men, and as am I more as I get older as well, like big time. A lack of these qualities is very off-putting to me now in a way that it wasn't, especially when I was more like porn obsessed and visually, you know, whatever, preoccupied. So yeah, so anyway, we started talking and we entered into this weird kind of cybersex MILF sort of relationship thing, and she pushed this into slightly more fetishy territory. I think she was just going with it and sensing how I was, and that I was quite timid sexually, and she pushed it into beyond just MILF stuff into quite fetishy territory, I'll just say, basically, and more sort of mommy-ish, you know, stuff. And that then became like an obsession for me, basically. Like I became then just like that became like a full-on sort of fetish obsession that I had, sort of femdom, kind of mommy kind of stuff. And so in my teenage years, I was like this became, I think, I had this ongoing thing with her, and then I think, to be honest, she got tired of like sort of like it being like that, of sort of like babying me, and she was like, we just stopped speaking. She said like, oh, my husband has found out about this and we can't talk anymore or whatever. I think she was making an excuse because it was all becoming a bit weird and pathetic. And I think at that time, that kind of content became a source of it was like a sort of comforting. It was sort of a respite from the sort of aggressiveness of like porn in general, and then the sexual sort of marketplace and the social world I had inhabited, and from all of my inadequacies and stuff. There was very little of this kind of content that existed, because most like femdom stuff is very aggressive and abusive and stuff, and I wasn't into that. I preferred it when it was a bit more like, it was more of this kind of nice vibe, you know, sort of like gentle vibe to it. And yeah, probably there was some more like deep-rooted psychological things going on, you know, weird shit. But I don't know, I think also it was just very it's very unthreatening and at the same time it was pretty dirty, you know, like, and unusual, and you get very used to just normal porn, and it becomes very boring, and so something that you're very aware is like quite sort of dirty and weird becomes also very horny to you, right? So I got really into that for ages, and there wasn't a great deal of it, and so I would just like obsessively scour the web looking for it, and there was only like a few sort of channels I used to watch, and it started to make me feel quite bad about myself, because I felt like this is like weird and pathetic, and I'm like sort of weak for liking this, or it's just like not what like men are supposed to be into. And it wasn't exclusively what I was into. Throughout all of my different sort of proclivities, I've also always just liked just normal porn, just certain porn stars I would just become attracted to, and I would like watching them, you know. I tended to need some kind of in, though, like it was just like porn. I didn't really care for that, you know. So it'd be like, you know, a scenario or a woman who has an interesting look or something. Yeah. And so I got really into that, and then I guess a while after that, I got into a couple of odd relationships, very, very short-lived ones of like 2 months, but very intense and crazy. And then very shortly after that, I met my girlfriend. And well, my current girlfriend. Going back a bit though, I mean, yeah, I remember. I mentioned this in another video about prostitutes and stuff, but I became very. There's so many different offshoots here and so many different things to remember, because it's been such a big part of my life, all of this. It's been like, you know, like almost like half of my sort of life since I was a teenager, so it's so much and too many things to talk about in one video. But I think I noticed like certain things certain things, like in a sort of dirty scenario, like I could just come like instantly and like loads of times, you know. And then other stuff that was probably more like, for example, I used to see prostitutes, and I could always come like 2 or 3 times in an hour, and the first one would be like almost immediately, you know, and it was just very easy. And then when I met my first girlfriend, like we were trying to do stuff, and like, and I wasn't really into it, and it wasn't something wrong with her. I think it was the fact that it was a mode of thinking about sex that I had never. Prior to this, I'd never even had any kind of involvement with like a girl like that wasn't a prostitute. You know, I'd never kissed a girl, never had girlfriends like until I was like an adult, you know. And so it was unusual to me, I guess. I don't know. It's strange. I don't really understand it. But basically like to put it bluntly, like she sucked me off for like half an hour and I just didn't come. And I didn't really feel anything, and it was, you know, it was the first time I had like a real blowjob. Like I should have really liked it, but I just felt nothing towards it. And a thing I noticed was like, and I felt like at the time I thought this is a bit on the nose, isn't it? Psychologically, you know, it's a bit fucking, you know, sort of Psych 101 or whatever. But like whenever there was a sort of feeling of genuine sort of intimacy involved, or it was in a relationship context, and there wasn't this feeling of it being dirty, I just wasn't into it, and I couldn't relate to that at all. My entire sex drive was centered around it had to be like dirty in some way, or it had to be, you know, like visual, and there had to be some kind of vibe, and it couldn't just be like a man and a woman who are together and who like each other, and you know, just I don't know. And yeah, so for those years that was a thing, and I don't really know why, and yeah, it's not. That's changed. All of it has been very much in a constant state of flux, to be honest. My whole relationship with all of it has grown and evolved so much over time, which is why it's easier for me to talk about things now that are a bit weird or embarrassing, because like I don't really care, you know, because it's just it's like all distant memories really. But probably for her it was, I didn't think about this at the time, because I just didn't really think about people's feelings as much as I should have back then, but probably for her it was really hurtful, and is probably why things ended so acrimoniously between us. That among other things, after a very, very, very short-lived relationship, I must say. But anyway, yeah. So it was strange though. Yeah, there did seem to be this weird issue, and I've noticed that there's that movie Shame, the Michael Fassbender movie, and I think that's kind of the point of that movie as well, is that was perhaps missed a bit, is that he is only aroused by shame, and I wouldn't say that was specifically the case for me, but there's something similar, I guess, going on. And yeah, so then I met my current girlfriend, and we began a more serious relationship, and obviously more long term. We're still together now, and porn and sex and everything, they were all big issues, and some of this I think was also, to be honest, when I think of it as well, the blowjob thing, some of that was probably to do with having been circumcised, because I got circumcised when I was like an adult, when I was like 17 or so, and I lost sensation in my dick basically, like for a pretty long time, and I've restored my foreskin now, and it's fine now, like it's great, but for a couple of years I didn't really have much sensation, and it was hard to, well, it wasn't hard to come if I was like watching porn, but I didn't have the same natural sensation in there that, like, you know, you should have in your dick. And yeah, so that when I entered into my current relationship, that and then all just my weird fucked up porn psyche were big problems, like early on. I also, I guess it just, some of it, there are some narratives surrounding porn that are typically feminist narratives, and I've always been averse to them from that angle, because I've felt that they've been designed in such a way to designate me as the bad guy, inherently so, irrevocably so, and unfairly in my view. But I see that when you remove that aspect of it, like, there's a lot of truth in some of it. The problem is it's not a full picture. What I mean to say is there's a lot of narratives about how porn causes like objectification of women and stuff, of course, but it absolutely causes the objectification of men as well, and it's ridiculous to say otherwise. The main thing is men tend to watch more porn, and most men are heterosexuals, so typically it's women who are the object of, who are being objectified. But at the same time, the men in that porn, they're all like, most of the time you don't even know their names. They're on like steroids, they got massive knobs, they're forced to like fuck unnaturally for hours on end in ways that are probably like painful, and they're just seen as like completely dispensable. So if I feel like if it was the other way round in that regard, and women occupied the role in porn that men occupy, feminists would say, oh, but the men in porn get names and they have fans and they become famous, and the women are just objects with no names. They're just faceless, nameless objects who are just there to perform. And, you could look at it either way. Definitely. That is inarguable. And now a lot more women watch porn. A lot of women are addicted to porn now, and they watch it for the men, right? And so it's all changing, and there are a lot of men who are famous in porn now and who women really like particularly. And of course it creates unhealthy ideas about both sexes. I would say, to be honest, the standards it sets for men in porn might be even higher, because it's like unreasonable. There's a lot of women, a lot of very hot women are as hot as the women in porn out and about that you see like all the time. There's probably not a lot, well, there's not a lot of men that have like dicks that big in real life, and but there's no point splitting hairs over it. Essentially it causes a lot of objectification and warped image sort of standards about both genders, and I think that depends on what you're watching it for, and who you're watching in porn, and how you're watching it. So for me, like, it definitely caused me to look at women in that way, and it took something that was already difficult in terms of me like socializing with women. I always have had, to be honest, even as an adult, I find it difficult to socialize with women. I find it very hard to talk to women. I find it depends on the women, of course. Like older women and stuff, no problem, like I get on fine with them, and some women in some circumstances totally normal. But I've always generally I've found like a strange barrier between me and women, and especially women my age and sort of social category, because I think they always think, oh, this guy wants to fuck me and I definitely don't want to fuck him, and this is gross, and in my head they've already decided A, that I'm like disgusting, and B, that I'm like a creep who just wants to fuck them. So I feel if I'm looking them in the eye, they think I'm trying to make like sexual eye contact with them, or if I'm nice to them, they think that I'm trying to have sex with them. So I feel like I have to be like cold and detached and unfriendly, and so I'm often quite frosty with women, or try to kind of ignore them, or if I do talk to them, I just seem very awkward. And so I still have that. But then particularly when I was younger, that was worsened a lot by the fact that I also was like sexualizing them a lot, and I would sort of be like, I realized my eyes would instinctively, like, I'm just sort of like, you sort of do like a checklist of them in your mind, or you're thinking like, what kind of like role does she fulfill in my mind sexually, and like what type is she, and how can I be into her, and what perspective could I look at her from that makes her sexual to me. And to some extent that's innate, but not to the extent that we do. And a lot of things that I think we think are natural parts of our sex drive are induced by porn. For example, coming loads of times. Like, I think I trained myself to, because I don't think it's normal to be able to come so many times, or necessary. And I think like, seeing things so sexually is like not really, I don't know, it's not really natural. But on the other hand, I mean, people are less healthy now hormonally and stuff, So maybe if we were, we'd be in some ways even more sexual, but I think we would just be healthier sexually, to be honest. Or we were in the past. And it was easier to just engage in normal sexual activity rather than this sort of like porn-brained kind of feedback loop, obsessive shit. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, so there was that, and it caused me just to objectify women and to to see them in that way. And like I said, I don't see that as having an ideological kind of bent to it or fitting into a larger narrative, because if I was gay, I would have done the exact same thing for men. Basically, I would have just objectified men sexually. And you can divide that up into race and into, you know, and women do that as well, racially, a lot. We all do it, essentially, and porn makes it worse. So, yeah, it became a problem in my relationship. It was... I did not have... We had a very, very... as they say, toxic relationship from the beginning. And very, it was sort of like, oh, well, she does this, so I'm going to do this, you know, well, if she can get away with this, then I can fucking do what I want. And so that became a justification for me to sort of like I didn't hide the fact that I looked at porn a lot from her, and I would like tell her and just be like, yeah, I just looked at loads of porn today while you're out and stuff. And she was obviously hurt by that, and she looked at porn a lot as well. But I think, and so I used to use that as justification, but I think had I not created that environment, she wouldn't have done that. And I would feel, I think, sometimes angry at her for not being what I wanted, for not being pornographic in the way that I wanted her to be, to not be, and I don't mean that to say that she wasn't that way inclined, like she was, because like me, she used to watch a lot of porn and stuff, but I mean, like, I would at specific times have specific things that I was interested in, and if she couldn't conform to that, then I was sort of in my imagination, you know, I was not present. And because whatever, if I wasn't into what was sort of on offer, like, then it had to be the way I wanted it to be. Like, I had to be mentally stimulated by whatever I was interested in at the time, and I wasn't going to budge on that. And so I would try and create certain feelings between us, or I would try and create, but then if I couldn't, I was quite happy to just think about porn and stuff. And she obviously was aware of this, and it was very bad for her self-esteem. And that's never gone away. Like, the behavior has changed, I'm not saying that, but those problems, like, have never fully gone away. It's definitely not like it was when we were teenagers. But it created problems that, you know, are hard to create. It did things that are hard to undo, I guess. And I always had her behavior in other aspects of our relationship as a justification that meant that I just behaved however I wanted, basically. And it wasn't always like that, you know. At times, like, many ways we had a good sex life, but there was always this thing of like, and in my mind, it was like, no, I'm just really horny, but really it was, I've I'm addicted to porn, and that's made me also addicted to sex, and it's made me obsessed with other women, and obsessed with looking at other women and talking about other women and thinking about other women and comparing my partner to other women and stuff like that, and a constant need for novelty and for this and that, and also thinking that it was good to be like these women that I looked at in porn, like, or that I looked at in real life, that were like, I don't know, like, I'm not trying to disrespect anyone who is this way, but women who were very, you know, free, and who generally I liked, you know, like a lot of women who are like really heavily tattooed and like fake tits and like dyed hair and stuff, and like I view that quite differently as an adult, and I'm not being judgmental, but like generally speaking, the kind of women I looked at and was interested in, I was like, oh, they're so like cool and sexual and hot, and I can see now really like behind the curtain a bit and what that's really about most of the time, not always of course, but I kind of see like that's not really what you think it is when you're young, and that's not something that is interesting to me anymore. But I was enough then to make my girlfriend feel inadequate a lot, and I made myself feel very inadequate, and I think all of the different proclivities I developed over the years sexually were a product of that, and also a means of reinforcing it, an unintended means of reinforcing it, I suppose. So after the years of being into sort of MILF stuff, I kind of went the other way, and I started to be into like sort of cute kind of like, you know, 18, 19-year-olds and stuff. And I think that was another, I mean, much like being into MILFs and stuff, part of it is just, they're just attractive, it's just a natural thing, but also, and that it's a thing, it's not just, because like most of the most like physically attractive women in porn, they're just sort of normal age, they're probably like, you know, 24 or whatever, and they're just like regular women. But there's a well-known issue in the porn industry that they don't really fit into a category, they're just women, they're not teens and they're not MILFs, and so they're just, there's nothing there, they're just like an attractive, beautiful woman. And like, so I guess it's kind of normal that people kind of go one way or the other and whatever. So most of the women you'll see around and think, oh, she's attractive, like they're just sort of, yeah, like what, at any age really, like in their 20s or whatever, but you sort of want like a thing anyway. And I think also it was another thing that felt a bit more, I knew that women my age did not like me, you know, and so it was sort of like, this was a bit more unthreatening, and it was also like a kind of a sort of a thing, you know, anyway. So I was into that, and like I said, also kind of women who were quite like, you might say a bit like trashy and sort of alt. I really liked that. Yeah, so very into that. And then that also became a thing that made my girlfriend feel very inadequate, because, you know, we met when we were young, and then we're both growing older, and I'm finding like young women very attractive, and I think it's a thing that is very upsetting to women generally, because they feel that like, well, because, you know, they're getting older, and then men are interested in younger women, and that doesn't really apply to men, like, so it's quite, I don't know, quite painful, you know. in the context of a relationship, and outside of that, I think it's just something that makes people feel insecure. But it's I don't know. Yeah, it was that. I think that part is because I guess in other ways, you know, like as a woman, you probably feel like you can compete, or you can do this, or you can change this about yourself, and but you can't like age backwards, and so it's a bit, yeah, I don't know, it's like that, I guess. Similar, there are similar things from it, you know, you can't become taller as a man, right? Like if you're short, you're just short. And so it's an insecurity that you will always carry, but there's not a time window on it. I don't know, it's different. But anyway, yeah, there was that. And that became like a sort of fixation of mine. And we then, and my girlfriend then also became more and more addicted to porn, and we used to fight about it. And a lot of, you know, it wasn't like we were both horrible to each other all the time or anything. We had bad tendencies we would fall into, but there were times when it would be like, let's both quit watching porn and let's try and have like a more normal relationship, and let's try and, like, you know, this isn't good for us or each other. You know, I'm presenting the more noteworthy and sort of salacious and unpleasant aspects of it, but it wasn't always like that. We had, despite our problems, a loving relationship, and we cared about each other's feelings, but that just got lost a lot of the time in other things, and you know, bad blood between the two of us would make it worse, and would, you know, and we've been together for a long time, so over those years lots of sort of inappropriate things happen and everything else, but we would try sometimes and stop, and then I would stop for like months, and then I'd find out she'd been watching porn, so I'd be like, oh fuck you then, I'm gonna fucking just watch porn all the time again, and go back and forth, and became the main issues in our relationship became, for me, it was like her behaviour generally, which was quite extreme a lot of the time, and then from her point of view was my sort of like wayward gaze, you know, and my kind of interest in other women and in porn and stuff like that, and it was a big problem for her, and a source, I think, of essentially like never-ending psychological torment, basically. And that made her feel really bad, and so there was more to it. I mean, it wasn't as simple as that. There was a lot of ways we both exacerbated this problem, and ways in which a lot of things we both did wrong in that regard that made the problem worse, but still, I can see it more clearly now for what it was in hindsight. Yeah, then, and I won't go on about it for too long because I mentioned it in another video, on amphetamines. I think maybe a different video I did about porn sometime, I'm not sure, but we sort of, when we got into doing like chemsex drugs and stuff, and we started trying to just embrace this part of ourselves like together, and just like get into like watching porn and all this shit together. And yeah, I went into that in that other video about amphetamines, but basically we got really into this, and it was, for a while it felt like we'd discovered like the secret, you know, and we started thinking we were going to have like an open relationship or have threesomes or do this or that, and I'm really glad we didn't. But we thought it was so liberating, because this thing that had been a kind of unsaid, mostly unsaid thing, and this really weird issue between us that was always the elephant in the room, it became suddenly a thing that, because I felt like I felt sometimes, because I was like, especially back then, I was like so into women, like, and I was so like, I just like loved looking at them, and and I would see them and just be like, oh my God, like, and I would like look on like Instagram and shit, and I just couldn't handle it. I was like so overwhelmed by like how attracted I was to them, and I always felt like it's like, it's not a bad input. It's not, I don't have like, it's not like a malicious feeling, you know, I'm not like, it's a feeling of like, not of love, but like, it's a good feeling, you know, I like them. I'm not like, so I always felt weird that it had become, in the context of a relationship, like this like malignant thing, like it was something bad, because in my mind I was like, this is an expression of like positivity. This isn't a hateful feeling I have. This isn't so it felt weird. And so I thought, oh, it's amazing because now we're like sharing this thing and we're able to talk about this together, and she can talk about what she likes and I can talk about what I like, and we can, you know, and we felt for a while doing all these drugs and looking at all this porn together, like we had like discovered some kind of a secret cheat code and sorted out our life and our problems and everything. And that wasn't the case, long story short. And then I, during that, developed a sort of obsession with cuckoldry. And at first, to be honest, I think I was quite like generous towards her in that regard, because I was also deep down thinking, well, like I might, like, if I can just make this leap of faith and be sort of like generous and put my ego aside with her, then she might be more open to like, because my biggest fear throughout the whole early part of our relationship was like if I become like successful, or I sort of go up in the world, or like, and like I have access to like sex and like women want to sleep with me, I always felt like I was terrified of this. Always, it was like a constant thing in my mind. I was like, I just want it so badly. Like I just want to like sleep with like everyone, and I know that would be so bad, and it was just tormented me all the time, because I was like, how I can't control it, like I can't stop myself, and I wouldn't be able to. And fortunately, you know, the opportunities were not frequent, but I always felt this way. And so I thought like, oh man, if we could just get like, we just had like an open relationship, and I never dreamed of suggesting it prior to this, but I always thought if we just had like an open relationship, maybe it would be all right. And I would never do that now, but I thought at the time like that would be really good, because I thought like, yeah, if I get this in exchange for that, I don't really care. And the irony is, well, not the irony, but the humour in it is, it would have been basically still impossible for me to meet women and very easy for her to meet men. So, you know, would have been a disaster anyway. But in fact, I think a realisation of that was also part of what prevented us from ever going too far down that road anyway. But I then, around this time, and I think maybe partially because I started to realise that, I developed a bit of an obsession with cuckoldry. And to be honest, I liked it in both directions. I really liked, again, the dirtiness of it, and this feeling of there was some kind of social order being enforced by what was going on sexually. There was some kind of like, one person was being humiliated, one person was being put on like a huge pedestal, the woman generally, and then one person, like, you know, the bull, was like given this like status as well as a man. And like, I don't think I just liked it from, I liked to imagine any part of that equation, to be honest. Like I liked imagining being the bull. I liked imagining being the cuckold. I just kind of liked all of it. I liked the fact that there was some kind of, someone was being put down, to be honest, in a way, like, and that they were accepting their place socially. And so for me, it was either being reduced to the place socially that I felt I had always been, which was like being disgusting to women and them preferring other men to me and not even considering me as sexual, being reduced to that where I really belonged, or being given a status that I had attempted to acquire at times throughout my life, and felt as an adult I had come a bit closer to, at least from a sexual point of view, at least from a sexual proficiency point of view, of being the guy who gets to fuck her, you know. And so for me it was like some weird simulator of like going wildly back and forth between like like a delusional level of sort of insecurity to taken to a point that's like sick, or a kind of delusional idea of being like some sort of like sex god or something, you know, some like sort of like someone that like a woman would is so attracted to that she would humiliate her own husband in order to have sex with, and that he would somehow enjoy this as well and would accept his place as like inferior. So it was just a full-on like roller coaster for me once I discovered all that shit of like weird psychodrama, sexual psychodrama. And then there was also the part of the other side of it, which there's not really a lot of porn of, but of wanting my girlfriend to be in that position, and her deriving some kind of weird uncomfortable pleasure from watching me with another woman. And but even saying that makes me feel upset, to be honest, and at the time it kind of did. And the more real any of this stuff became, the more I didn't really like it. When it was us, when it was, you know, Kieran and Tara, like, I didn't like it. But when it was just me, my porn brain, the other me that's always sort of been there, that's just almost like a separate person, I really liked it. But the problem is my girlfriend was not, she was just my girlfriend. She was a real person. So I didn't, it was hard for me to, it was when it felt real, I didn't really, and yeah, I didn't like actually the idea of her being hurt by it. I was more comfortable with me being hurt by it, but even that was very upsetting. And I got into some very strange states psychologically, where I was like really horny, but like really upset by it, and felt really bad about myself and felt really disgusted for liking it. But it was very horny. And yeah, it has a weird pull on me, to be honest. Like, at the moment I'm not watching porn. I'm generally, like, I can't say I've quit watching porn, it would be a lie, but I'm definitely a million times better with it as an adult anyway. I'm not even close to watching it like every day or anything, but at the moment I'm doing like semen retention, so I haven't even come for like weeks, but it's still, that kind of cuckoldry porn still has a weird pull over me, I sort of hate it, and I kind of like it, and I'm oddly drawn to it, basically. And I think I like the pedestal the woman is put on, and I think it reminds me of a way I've felt, or a space I've occupied over the years, and it also sort of horrifies me. I don't know how to describe it. It's weird, man. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I like also like cheating stuff in general, and things like that just have a strange pull over me. I don't know. Yeah. And there's this odd sort of emotional component to it that's hard to describe. And throughout all of that, still a lot of the time I just like normal porn, and I think in real life, like my tendency is just towards just normal sex, to be honest. Like, just like, I'm just attracted to attractive women, and just, you know, like everyone essentially just want to have sex with them, basically. It's not like you know, that stuff doesn't exist outside of the sort of porn brain, you know. But how many times can you just watch a video of two people having sex and not be bored out of your mind and still be aroused by that, just like people having sex. Like, what's going on? Why are they having sex? What's the meaning behind this? You know, there has to be something else, surely. And yeah, and that's the problem I always found. If I was watching porn, it would be like, if I was just watching normal porn, it'd be a woman I was really attracted to, but I'd be like, what's happening? Why? What's going on? You know, like, why are they having sex? So anyway, yeah, and I found that with any of that stuff, any of the kind of weird, slightly more like fetishy stuff, it's you if you haven't looked at porn for a while, you wouldn't look at that stuff. You just look at normal porn and be really horny for it. But then the more you look at porn, the more you need something weirder. So a lot of people, this becomes like sissification or like serious abuse or like just really weird fetish stuff. You know, it goes in all sorts of crazy directions because most people, I think, find that just watching normal porn just doesn't really do much. So it's pretty crazy, yeah. And yeah, it's still been, I wish I could say it's resolved. I'm on a new thing at the moment. I've been doing semen retention and I've been finding it really good, but that's because that in itself gives me a kind of motivation and an energy, and we're having some problems at the moment in our life and relationship, so we've not really been sort of doing anything for a while. We sort of had a falling out in that regard, I guess, and so it's easy for me now to do what I'm currently doing and to try this new thing, which is giving me so much energy and which I'm getting something out of. But I know that if I stop doing this and I go back into like a sexual mindset, I find it so hard not to look at porn, and I find it like, I don't know, it's harder than anything for me, any other addiction. And I think the dog needs a piss. I'm going to have to take her out in a minute, but I've never taken her out by myself, not since she's had her injury. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Yeah, and there's a constant array of different women, and they're so much more attractive than they used to be, and you get, it stimulates your dopamine as well, and you're like, oh, I wonder if she's ever done this kind of thing, or has she ever done this or that, and you're looking up all this different shit about this woman, and it's so stimulating, even if you don't like cum or anything. It's fucked up, man. I think it's wreaked absolute havoc on our society, and I'm not blaming it for my decisions or choices. In the same way, if you get drunk and you run someone over, you can't blame the alcohol. It's your fault, but that's still that's still it's still evidence of the harm that alcohol can cause and has caused in our society. And it's still an indictment of alcohol. And so I think porn is a disaster. Like internet porn is an absolute disaster. I think the worst part is how normal it is that kids look at it, and that I sometimes think, like, if I had a son, like, when he was a kid, I would put all the like blockers on the computer and shit. Anyway, I'm not having him fucking grow up like me, but like, I would feel almost a responsibility when he was a bit older to say to him, like, to talk to him about it. But like, how can you? It's like, yeah, by the way, dude, images of everything you've ever wanted sexually exist online in 4K definition, and it's hard to explain why, but you shouldn't ever look at that. Even though everyone you know probably will, and it's extremely difficult to avoid. Like, how do you can stop a kid from looking at it, and people should, and it's a shame that people have failed to do that. And that will change eventually, I think, unless we become so insane and damaged by it that we lose touch with reality. But someone, when your kid's becoming like independent, they're going to be more or less an adult, but not really. You can't control everything they do. They go off to like university. What you can do, put a porn blocker on the computer. It's crazy and shit. So how do you even? How can you realistically? So I was thinking about it, and I thought I just have to tell him. I just have to say how harmful I think it is, and say like I really think it. If I could go back, I would never look at it, and that would be really difficult. But I would try my hardest to never look at it, and I would understand that just like a drug, it can be seriously harmful to you physically and mentally. And I really don't think you should do it, but I don't think that would work. And it's something you almost have to learn from yourself. But by the time you do, it's too late, because it seems so harmless. It invites you in, they sort of, they even talk directly to you through the camera and stuff, or they like, it's made so inviting, and it's like all these people, and it's fun, and they're like, it's horny, and you're invited to watch, and you're, and it's made to seem innocuous, like, oh my God, yeah, they're having so much fun. And it's so dark, like, it's so unhealthy. And I don't think we should be able to look at videos of other people having sex, to be honest. I don't think that's natural to sit around wanking to someone else having sex. And I think that's part of where the cuckoldry thing comes from, is you're watching other people have sex, people who are generally more attractive than you. And you're watching a man have sex with a woman that you like, or a woman have sex with a man that you like. And that person is not you. And I don't think that really exists in nature. I know, like, we might have watched one another fuck back in the day because we weren't very private about it, but it wasn't normal to sit around. For some people's whole sex life is to sit around wanking, watching videos of other people having sex. When you step back from your 21st century view and you just go back and zoom out, you're like, wait, some people's whole sex life for their entire lives is to sit in a chair looking at videos of other people having sex and wanking to it. Like, that's sex for them. It's insane. It's completely insane. So I hope I can I can improve and continue to because I have a lot, and I hope I can resist that temptation more. But I know that there's, I don't know, it's hard to describe. It's so multifaceted, and it's so inviting because there's all these different beautiful women, and some of them are likable in some ways, and some of them behave like this or that, and there's new one, and they seem to get more beautiful all the time, and there's new ways of it being done, and it's better, and sometimes you're sometimes it's like a means to an end, and it's tough, man. And I think it's really, really, really tough for a lot of people, but I feel like I've made a lot of progress, and I'm continuing to make a lot of progress, and I want to just continue that because it's not healthy, and I don't like how sort of weak I feel when I cave into it, and how tired you become, and just, I don't know. I just don't think it's right. I don't think it's healthy. And recently, since being off it, I feel a lot better, and I think I should continue with this, because even in interacting with people, I feel more normal, to be honest. Like, and weirdly, even though I haven't looked at porn and haven't come for like weeks, I feel less interested in women. Like, I feel more like, I feel kind of like quite horny, like physically. I can kind of feel like that I'm really horny. But if I'm out and about and I'm not like seeing women as like porn, and I'm not going straight to that, because my brain is not just in that mode, you know, just like porn. It's like if you look at your phone constantly for weeks, your brain just constantly wants to look at your phone. If you put your phone away for a week, you don't have that impulse. And I'm getting the same feeling. Like, I don't really have that impulse like as much, and I feel more human and more kind of there, you know. So that's really good, I think. And yeah, there's probably a lot more I could have gotten into in this video. I haven't had breakfast yet, and I'm sort of getting aware that the dog needs to go out, and I have to do it by myself, and I don't know how I'm going to manage bringing her up and down the stairs and opening all the doors by myself. And I'm getting pretty hungry and tired. And it's very awkward to talk about this stuff, even for me, as someone who generally I'm fairly comfortable talking about most things, but I find all of this awkward and personal and embarrassing. But yeah, I'm trying to be honest in the hopes that it's useful or interesting, because what's the point in being vague? You know, it's not, I don't know. Yeah, there's no point in beating about the bush, basically. So yeah, interested to know, as usual, what you guys' thoughts are and what your experiences with all this has been, and anything else. Yeah, your opinions on it. Thanks for watching, guys, if you made it this far, and yeah, have a nice day.